Commissioner Fitz Johnson, it is almost election day. You are a Republican running to keep your seat on the PSC. Thanks for making the time to talk to us on what I'm sure is a really busy stretch of campaigning.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was campaigning before I came in here, and I'll be campaigning as soon as I leave here.
And it is, and you and I were chatting a little bit before we got started rolling here, but I think this is a good place to start. Through a quirk in the calendar and some other quirks, the PSC race, usually, I don't want to say it's a sleepy thing, it's important, but doesn't usually get as much attention as it does. This year, it's at the top of the ticket. How are you navigating that?
Well, you're absolutely correct. Rarely do you see this much attention to a Public Service Commission race, but it is vitally important to every citizen here in the state of Georgia. So I'm proud and I'm glad to see it at the top of the ticket to get some attention on it. You know, we work very hard. We got 5 conservative Republicans running the Public Service Commission, and we are doing a fabulous job, if I don't say so myself.
Have you had to do some educating of voters? Have you gone to some campaign stops and they say, hey, Commissioner Fitz Johnson's here on the PSC, and people go, what's the PSC?
Absolutely. Everywhere we go, there has to be a little bit of education, because folks don't make the tie from their power or from their gas to the Public Service Commission. So there's a lot of education going on out there. And again, this is good for our state. It's good for the commission, and you know I'm just happy to be out there doing it. And
you, unsurprisingly, you do this for a living, and this is your job, so you know this, but you put your finger right on it. You guys deal with the regulation of a lot of things. It's not just power in Georgia. I think railroads are under your auspices.
Got a little bit of the railroad too.
But power is what most people think of when people open up their bills, their electric bills.
Yes.
There is a tie to the PSC. I think a lot of people, if they had a chance to ask you a question, they would ask this, so I want to ask it to you. If you're reelected, what will you do to make sure power bills are affordable?
Well, you hit something on the head right there, right at the beginning of that. Folks in this state, we got to understand, everything we do at the commission affects your life every day. We're the #1 state to do business in the United States for the last 12 years, okay? Part of that is because we have dependable, reliable, affordable energy. You know what I'm saying? And Georgia Power, we regulate the investor-owned utilities like the Georgia Powers of the world, the Atlanta Gas Lights of the world. So we got to make sure that is available for when these companies come into town. And I will tell you, #1 question I get out there is about the data centers. You know, we talk about data centers and their impact on the state of Georgia. And #1 question I get as a commissioner is, well, I'm a residential customer. I don't want to pay the bills to have these big data centers come in here. Or I'm a small business. I don't want to pay the bills. So what we did down in the commission, we put a rule in place. Okay, they're going to, data centers or large loads, we call them, 100 megawatts and above, they're going to pay their fair share right up front. They're going to pay their upfront infrastructure. They're going to pay up front for their transmission and generation. They're going to sign long-term contracts. And they're going to have a minimum spend. And what that does, it puts downward pressure on the rates. It allows us to continue to upgrade our grid. And #1, it protects our residential customers and our small business owners not having to pay that bill. We need to defunct that myth. We're not letting you pay, we're not going to let that fall on our residential customers or our small businesses.
I want to revisit something when we talk about affordability in a moment, but you bring up data centers, and that's something we get a lot of questions about too. So let's linger here for a moment. You say that through some rulemaking at the PSC, you've put some downward pressure on these, you call them large load entities, the data centers. Are you prepared right now to tell Georgians that data centers will not cause their rates to increase?
100%.
No increase
100%.
because of data centers?
There's not going to be any increase because of data centers or large loads, 100 megawatts and above. Because you got to think about your large manufacturers that come to this state as well. No, sir, they will not see, and like I said, that's what I hear the most out there. They don't want to pay for it, and I don't blame them. I'm a Georgia Power customer, and I'm a small business owner, and I don't want to foot the bill for those that come into the state.
How much, you talk about large loads, how much data, let me rephrase that, how much power will these data centers that are coming online require from the grid?
Well, it just depends on the data center.
If
you can have a data center, you can have a data center that's 100 megawatts. You can have the larger data centers taking up a gig, 1,000 megawatts. So it just depends on the size. And are we prepared? We're absolutely prepared.
And forgive me for maybe asking an ignorant question here, but I think it's an important one. You mentioned, and rightly so, every data center comes in its own size. They're all large, but there's scales of large to really, really big and a lot in between. But from where you sit, regulating this energy system, I would imagine you have a pretty good sense of how much increased demand there has been on the grid from these data centers coming online. Could you give me a sense and give our audience a sense of how much increased demand there has been because of these data centers?
Sure. What we do when we forecast and that's exactly what we do. We forecast what we think or what we believe is coming. And we do these things called IRPs down at the Commission. It's an Integrated Resource Plan. That's a 20-year plan to plan out the grid. Every 3 years, we hold hearings, public hearings, very transparent, come down, about what do we expect to come. In this last IRP, we just approved for Georgia Power 6,000 megawatts of power, new power through 2031, with an additional 2,500 should we need it. Now that's given us the space to make sure that as these new data centers come on, and in the forecast, we believe we'll need every bit of that. That when those data centers come on, we're ready. It's good for business. It's good for our economy. It's one of the things that makes Georgia great.
Let's talk about some affordability questions some more. Because obviously this is a new year, but in 2024 we talked to a lot of voters in that presidential race. Probably the number one issue they cited was affordability as the thing that was driving how they decided to cast their ballot. We're in a new year.
Yep.
People are still concerned about affordability. You've been on the commission since 2021. The AP reports that there have been 6 rate increases in recent years. To somebody who's concerned about their power bill, who sees those rate increases, they may blame you for that.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I say, look, I mentioned this before. Georgia's the number one place to do business, and it's great for our economy. Our power rates in the state of Georgia are well below the national average. Now, our grid, if you can imagine me telling you, okay, we're going to have some rolling brownouts for you. 6 to 8 on Wednesdays, you're not going to have any power, and that's what we're seeing. That's what Green New Deal policies, my opponents want to bring in Green New Deal policies that'll add more to your bill, add $70 a month to your bill, over $800 a year. These Green New Deal policies are causing this expansion of people's bills. And I will tell you, we don't believe in that in Georgia. We have an all of the above approach here in Georgia. We have baseload energy, right? Our baseload, which means it operates 24/7. You got your natural gas, you got your coal, you got your nuclear. Okay, we have our renewables, which are a part of that all of the above approach. We have some wind that we import. We have solar. We have hydro. We have biomass. This is across all the energy sectors to make sure that your lights stay on. Make sure on the hottest day of the year when you get home, your house is cool, or on the coldest day of the year, your house is warm. That's what we're doing to make sure that we have a proper energy mix, and that's how we want to keep it. Also, we imposed a 3-year freeze on Georgia Power's rates. I talked about the data centers earlier and about those rules, and I talked about downward pressure on the rates. That's one of those things that allowed us to freeze their rates for 3 years.
To a Georgian who hears that, I'm sure some will be nodding their heads. They're going to be saying, yeah, absolutely, I agree. I imagine, and I'd expect that you would agree with this, there will be others who might ask, hear what you say, but there may be some Georgians who say, all that may be true, but my rates are still going up. We have this 3-year freeze in place now. If you're reelected, they may want to ask you, after that rate freeze is up, will you promise them you won't vote for any more further rate increases?
We don't know what our future holds. But if you go back to what I talked about earlier, our integrated resource plan, over a 20-year plan. Okay, when we look at the plan, we don't sit down and go, hey, how can we increase the rates? What we want to do is to make sure that we have affordable, reliable, dependable energy. So when we look at that, and I can tell them, I can look them in the eye and say, look, every penny you spend is going to be good for you, it's going to be good for Georgia, it's going to be good for our economy here in the state of Georgia. You
brought up the Green New Deal. That's a fuzzy term that has come into the political zeitgeist, and different people have different definitions of it. I think it's always good to start a conversation with defining our terms. When you say Green New Deal, what does that mean to you?
That means that my opponents, they want to bring in, get rid of our natural gas, or slow down our natural gas. They want to get rid of our coal plants, and they want to make sure that they want to add and believe that this entire grid can run off of renewables. Like I said, we're not against renewables. I'm all for renewables, but they have their place. You know what I'm saying? We have to have the base load that's going to run 24/7. As you know, the sun doesn't shine 24/7, and the wind doesn't blow 24/7, and the water doesn't flow. So we have to have the base load. And the Green New Deal is very expensive. And very expensive means ratepayers are getting rate hikes.
When I asked you about the rate hikes earlier, you quickly started talking about the Green New Deal. I think it's worth dwelling here for a moment. In your view, when we talk about affordability, is the choice that you see the PSC having to make between potential rate hikes and potentially adopting a Green New Deal that you said has caused brownouts in some places, is it an either or are there ways to bridge that gap?
Well, as I was just explaining, as long as we have our base load, we're not against we aren't against renewables. Renewables just have their space. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to have renewables at the expense of our grid, at the expense of me having to tell you, hey, I'm sorry, but Wednesdays 6 to 8, we're going to have to shut you down.
And that's a pretty extreme thing, though. Georgians aren't seeing that. How many other people in the country
are you kidding? If you ever see that from Georgia, you need to personally come down there and kick me right out of there. That's why you won't see that here. And it's because of the commission. We have 85 professionals down there at the commission supporting us 5 commissioners. And I will tell you, every single one of those are working every day to make sure that we're not in that situation. And we haven't been. You have not seen that, nor will you see blackouts and brownouts. That happens when you decide that you're gonna look at your reliability and say, oh, don't worry about that, as long as we have solar or as long as we have wind going. That's not the way we operate.
How common do you see those kinds of situations happening in other states?
It does.
It's not particularly common, though, right?
It's not particularly common, but it happens. And if it ever happened to you, if I said you for the next 3 months, you going to be okay with that? I don't think Georgians are going to be okay with that.
Let's talk about the politics in this race. I would imagine there are some people who are hearing about the PSC maybe for the first time because it's getting more attention than usual this year. They understand that the PSC's job is to, in large part, regulate utilities in Georgia. And they hear you talking about the board being 5 conservative Republicans. You talk about the Green New Deal as something you don't like. These are really charged political terms. Mm-hmm. Somebody may hear all this and think, boy, this is a pretty partisan tenor for a race for a board that regulates utilities. They might imagine that should be sleepy. How did it get so partisan?
Well, I think, first of all, being at the top of the ballot and being the only thing going. We're the only race out there.
The spotlight's on you.
Yeah, the spotlight's on us. I wish that we had this much attention 24/7, because 365 days a year, because it is so vitally important. And when you look at policy, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you look at policy and how we operate. That is the major deal. That is the difference in this race. Do you want good conservative values? Do you want good energy 24/7? Do you not want blackouts? Do you not want to wake up and find out, oh, I flipped that switch and the lights didn't come on? That's the big difference here. My opponent is going to want to shut down your coal plants, is going to reduce your natural gas. Let me tell you what that does. That's base load energy. That's 24/7. That's what starts to cause the brownouts, the blackouts, and your bills to go up.
We talked to your opponent, Peter Hubbard, the other day, actually yesterday, and we asked him about that. He's been a vocal supporter of renewable energies. Oh, yeah. In his answer, though, he said that he's not entirely against non-renewable energies either. He would push back on your characterization of his claims there. Do you feel like you maybe are exaggerating his stance a little bit?
I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating the stance. I've been reading, I've been watching, I've been listening. I'm a 21-year Army veteran. I'm a businessman by trade. I'm a lawyer. Okay, I think I get to know when I'm listening and understanding and analyzing. I know what he's up to. And what he's up to is he wants to fool the public and come in here and shut down our coal plants. Coal plants are jobs. Coal plants are reliability. Coal plants keep the lights on. Okay? Natural gas, same thing. Natural gas keeps the lights on 24/7. That's what we need, and we want to make sure that sticks around here in Georgia. And it means jobs, and it means good for our economy.
Let's talk about your background. You allude to it a little bit, and this is a question we've asked all the candidates in this race. You're obviously on the commission now. Before you were elected, back up, because you were nominated, you were appointed by Governor Kemp. Before you joined the PSC, did you have any professional background in energy regulation?
Directly in energy regulation, You call 21 years in the Army, I call yes.
What was your
call-
occupation in the Army?
I was a medical service corps officer. Do we need energy, and do I have to make sure the energy stays on? And when you're running a company, I had a defense contracting firm, 1,700 employees, 36 states, 7 foreign countries. Do you think I had my eye on the energy? You better believe I do. I have a business now where I'm a Georgia Power customer. You think I keep an eye on the bills? You better believe we do. That's an energy. Plus, I've been in the job for 4.5 years. It's a complex. As we try to explain what the Georgia Public Service Commission does out there, you can only get a snapshot because nobody has 10, 12 hours to sit around and listen to us talk about the excitement of the Public Service Commission. But I will tell you, it's very complex. And you can't just step into this thing and not understand how this operates and how to move the state forward.
There has been a real explosion of renewable tech in Georgia. We have the Hyundai plant. Rivian is plans to develop a large plant here in Georgia. These are renewable battery factories, electric vehicle plants. There has also been, and maybe I'm mischaracterizing, but you seem to have some concerns about renewable sources and renewable tech. Do you see your role in the PSC as in contention with these industries?
Not at all. Not at all. And I hope I didn't confuse you with, that
no confusion. This is why we ask.
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm all for the renewables and the technology that we have going forward when it comes to using batteries and battery storage. We just approved in the last IRP the largest battery storage that we've ever approved. So we are moving forward. And see, that's, I think, the misconception. People think, oh, they don't want to do renewables and they don't want to do battery storage. Oh my gosh, all of the above approach. All of the above approach. It is coming. We know the technology is getting better, and we will be able to use that technology as we move forward.
If you're reelected, what does the next, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you're reelected, you've got to come up for reelection again in another year, right? Because of the quirks of these calendars.
That's it.
But let's look down the line here. If you're reelected, what does, because your job is to plan for the future too, you talk about these IRPs. Right. If you're reelected to another term on the PSC, what does the Georgia Power grid system look like in the future, 5, 10, 15 years down the road? What should Georgia consumers be prepared for?
This commissioner would like to see us do a lot more as we get ready to move nuclear forward. As you know, we brought Plant Vogtle, the cleanest energy plant on in the country, units 3 and 4. We brought those online last year. And nuclear is clean, it's base load, and it lasts 60, 80 years, and probably with upgrades, you're talking about 100 years from now. I'd like to see us continue down the road of exploring how we can better use nuclear. We have these SMRs, so small modular nuclear reactors out there that are in force overseas. We're still studying them here. Depending on who you talk to, we should have an SMR here, 6, 8 years from now. And those are about half the power of the AP1000s that we have out at Plant Vogtle. They're more mobile and don't take as big a footprint.
These are small nuclear reactors.
They're small nuclear reactors, and I think they're good for our future. And I think that's what we're going to see more of.
Let's end here. We've covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. Absolutely. I think this is always a good place to end. To a voter who has not yet cast their ballot, is still making up their mind about who to choose in this PSC race, your elevator pitch to that undecided voter would be what?
My decision would be, look, if you want your bills, because that seems to be the number one thing, if you want your bills to remain reliable, to remain stable, to make sure that your power comes on, you're going to want to vote a Republican in the office. Because if you put a Democrat in that office, your bills are going to go up, and we've already fleshed this out. It's $70 a month, maybe over $800 a year. Your bills will go up. You'll also be looking at the idea that we're not going to have you may be looking at brownouts or blackouts. What you want is stability. We have a 3-year rate freeze in place. What you want is stability, and what you want is reliability to make sure when you wake up in the morning, you flip that light switch, the lights come on. And that's what you'll get from me.
Commissioner Fitz Johnson, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate you having me.